Torrington City Council. Good evening and welcome. We have, as always, Ryan Kaith from KGOS. This is being broadcast live on the radio, and it will be put up on YouTube later. We also have Miss Cindy Sheely here from the Torrington Telegram. This is Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. This is the 17th council meeting of the year and the first council meeting in September. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Councilman Rick Patterson to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on our agenda this evening is Harley Mark Remembrance. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We wanted to take a few minutes tonight in grateful remembrance for the service and sacrifice of Torrington Police Department Lieutenant Harley Mark, who gave his life for our community on September 7th of 1993. Lieutenant Mark was fatally wounded in a motor vehicle accident while attempting to apprehend a violent predator who had harmed our community greatly. He selflessly placed the safety of others above his own, and we will never forget his sacrifice or that of his family. With us tonight are Lieutenant Mark's wife, Joanne, his three daughters, Tammy, Wendy, and Dawn, as well as lots of other family members going down several generations. As we honor Lieutenant Mark on the 30th anniversary of his passing, it can be easy to remember only the pain of his loss and forget the impact and legacy that he left behind. Lieutenant Mark was a man who didn't think less of himself, but instead he thought more of others. He was deeply committed to serving our community, building relationships, and loving his family. We are all the grateful recipients of the investments that he made here. As an agency, we seek to follow Lieutenant Mark's example by serving our community with integrity, honor, and the same focus on caring for others that Lieutenant Mark demonstrated every day. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us to remember Lieutenant Mark this evening. We invite you to keep his family in your thoughts and prayers on this anniversary of his loss, and lots of grateful recognition. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Mrs. Mark and family, we appreciate your husband's service and his sacrifice. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the mayor's informational items. On the calendar, autumn begins on September 23rd. Although school has started and the municipal pool is closed for the season, baseball has ended and we are anticipating fall activities. Summer-style weather continues, so please continue to enjoy our fine golf course and many parks and sports fields. Please continue to keep up with your lawns and the weeds. Your hard work helps you to avoid a visit from our code enforcement officers, and it beautifies the city. Please continue to acquaint yourselves with recent traffic and pedestrian control changes. I point out especially the new four-way stop signs at the entrance and exit to the Torrington Middle School, and the 17 new pedestrian crosswalks that extend the entire length of the city walking path. Please take extra care with all the increased traffic from after when the school year begins. Bus traffic, extra pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, and now all the electric bikes I see out and about. As always, please slow down and please avoid using your cell phones while driving. Please enjoy the last few weeks of the summer season. And we recently got an air quality alert. There is an air quality alert in Torrington in the area until 1 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the August 15th, 23 council meeting as published.
I would move, Mr. Mayor, to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victron. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda as published in the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, the consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the actual approval of the agenda this evening. It's been published and presented to council for their review.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman,
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
okay. Councilman Kelly has the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the agenda this evening signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, the agenda for this evening is approved. Next item on the agenda is what we call the public forum. And for those sitting here, that is for non-agenda items. And there is a time limit of 2 minutes, and the speaker must sign up before the meeting. This is a time for council to listen. No action will be taken. And we have a taker this evening. That's Abe Correa. So if you want to come up here, Abe, you got your 2 minutes.
I don't think I'll take quite 2 minutes. Good evening. My name is Abe Correa. I'm the president of the Legion baseball program here in town. The Legion baseball program has use of 2 fields here in town, the 2 90-foot fields, Bullock and Jordan. We have a partnership with the city where we share in the maintenance of our fields. We share in the cost of the maintenance of these fields and the improvements that we'd like to see done to these fields. It's a partnership that we feel works, and it's a partnership that we value. I sent an email out last week thanking Mayor Doby, Dennis Estes, Matt John, and the Parks Department for their help this past season and in seasons before. We simply couldn't do it without this partnership. Again, a partnership that we truly do value. And so I wanted to just sneak in here tonight and thank the council as well. You all play a part in this when it comes to the budgeting and the funding, allowing them to help us go forward with baseball, the Legion baseball program here in Torrington. So that probably wasn't even a minute, but I am here tonight to say thank you for all your help.
Thank you, Abe. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Next item on the agenda is under the category action items. Number 1 on the agenda is to ratify the open container permit approved on August 25th, 23. That was Diana May requested an open container permit for a retirement party that was held on September 3rd, 23 from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. at Jordan Park. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The event has passed. We had no problems, and it was a pretty standard open container permit.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions for Chief Johnson?
Mayor, I would move to ratify that permit.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to ratify that open container permit set forth in agenda on the item number 1. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Kelly. Any further discussion, gentlemen? I will call for a vote on that. All those in favor of ratifying the open container permit set forth in item number 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that is ratified. Item number 1. Next item on the agenda is to ratify a memorandum of understanding, what we call an MOU, signed on August 30th of 23 between Eastern Wyoming College and the City of Torrington Wagon Tails Shelter. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This was something that EWC approached us with. They needed it as part of their certification program for the vet tech. It essentially puts in writing what is a mutually beneficial partnership between the shelter underneath the police department and the vet tech students at EWC. And happy to answer or stand for any questions that you might have.
And Chief, I know I signed that on the morning of August 30th, as did you.
Yes, sir.
And can you just briefly explain what the big hurry was?
I believe that was part of their certification program that they were needing to get passed in short order. And so they were a little bit down to the wire of getting that done, which is what the urgency was.
Okay. And my understanding of that contractor MOU, it's basically Terry Smith, who manages Wagon Tails, allows use of those animals for the veterinary school, and in return, she gets free veterinary services for the animals that are confined down at Wagon Tails. That's essentially it, right?
Basically, I mean, the partnership has gone on for years. It's kind of a combination of her loaning them animals to place up at until the animals are adopted. Obviously, adoption takes priority over the college's treatment there. But she'll actually place animals up at the college and allow them to practice caretaking of the animals, treatment of the animals. The students also come to the shelter and help her with basic veterinary care. Neither party is obligated to continue those should it become not beneficial anymore, but it's a great partnership and works really well.
And my understanding, this has been going on for years.
Very long time.
It has, and I add a little clarity
Yes,
to
sir.
one thing. One of the things that happens a lot of times is rumors fly around that EWC is experimenting on animals or whatever, and so I want to just make that crystal clear what's happening. Those animals that are used up there are, they're x-rayed, their teeth are cleaned. Occasionally they'll have an IV started, anesthesia. Some of those dogs get to like that anesthesia because they get to do that periodically. But that's the sort of stuff that they do. So there's not experimentation or anything, any kind of animal cruelty. The best thing about this agreement, from my perspective, having been associated with this at EWC, it's an accreditation requirement that just came up. But there has to be a place that, should something go terribly wrong with the facility, that they can quickly transfer those animals somewhere. But it also benefits the city, because if something would go south at the shelter, they could then be housed and cared for up at the college. So it is mutually beneficial.
Yep.
I read through it. It looks like a very good agreement.
Okay. Gentlemen, any further questions for Chief Johnson?
I don't have a question, Mr. Mayor, but I can attest to everything that Councilman Patterson has said and the chief. I actually was selected to serve on the accreditation committee last week for the college and their vet tech program, and this was one thing that the committee did ask for. So there was a multitude of MOUs that were needed for that, but anyway.
All right. Any further questions, Councilman, for Chief Johnson, or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to ratify that MOU signed on August 30th, 23 between EWC and Torrington Wagon Tail Shelter.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve that MOU set forth in item 2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Kelly. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of ratifying the MOU between Wagon Tail Shelter and EWC as set forth in item 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that MOU set forth in item 2 is ratified and approved. Next item on the agenda is, well, let me explain this a little bit before the memo or the agenda says signed 9/1/23. At one time, we thought it was going to be signed because it was sort of an emergency contact from the Al Umberzat, the mayor of the town of Lingle, to get some mosquito spraying done at Lingle. And I spoke to Anna Barnes, she's the attorney for the town of Lingle. I spoke to Al Umberzat, the mayor, and I spoke to Mr. Eddington, our city attorney. And Mr. Eddington advised me this afternoon that he'd spoken to Anna Barnes, and she was ready, willing, and able to accept a signed MOU as of tomorrow. And so we wanted to not have me sign it, but give the council an opportunity to approve it. So I would call on, well, Mrs. Strecker first on that.
Well, I was contacted by you to try to, get mosquito spraying for the city of Lingo. We agreed there needed to be something in writing, so this is the result of it. And that's, about all I know. I figured up the price for the cost of the labor and the equipment. And so that's where we are.
Okay, and Mr. Eddington?
Mayor, this kind of developed the week I was out on vacation, and so Ms. Barnes authored this. Last Monday, I reviewed it and made a couple changes. Mr. Umberzat signed it on September 1st. Ms. Barnes delivered it to me this morning during city court, and so we just asked for approval of the governing body and your signature tonight. But it's in good shape, and it's beneficial certainly to Lingle, and the city is being compensated fairly for their services.
And I just want to thank you, Mr. Eddington. Let the council know, Mayor Umberzat contacted me, and we had a conversation, 10 days ago or so, and they did not have employees that were permitted to do the spraying. And he told me that he had contacted County Weed and Pest, and they were unable to do it, so he was reaching out to Torrington for a hand on that. And the reason that it's critical is, as we all know, there have been several cases of West Nile virus in the community and in the county, and those are mosquito-borne. That's a mosquito-borne illness, and the purpose of the spraying is to reduce the number of mosquitoes and the chances of people catching the West Nile. So that's my input on it. If any councilmen have any questions for me, or Attorney Eddington or Clerk Treasurer Strecker?
Well, the only question I would have was, in the section B, there's no figures for whatever it's going to cost the city of Lingle. I can't believe that they would ratify that.
I
Unless
did
they got a
email
copy
that to
different than
them
we got.
later, and after I had figured it, and it is $28 an hour.
It's a separate attachment, actually. Councilman, we have an attachment that goes with the MOU once the calculations were made. It's
We don't-
$28.75 per hour.
We don't have that.
It must not be in the packet.
On the agenda, Mr. Eddington, there's not that attachment.
Okay. But that, yeah.
My apologies
We
on
have
that.
wages, withholding, equipment charge for the pickup and the sprayer, and employee totals $28.75 per hour, which they've agreed to. I possess 2 originals signed by Mayor Umberzat.
Mr. Mayor, my question would be, is in that cost, is the cost of the pesticide included?
The pesticide we receive from Goshen County Weed and Pest. They
Okay.
get it through the grant program there. So the city gets it, and we'll just use,
Equipment
know.
and labor.
mhm.
Okay.
And our employee who's going to do it has the permit in order to do it lawfully.
Yes, our parks supervisor has the licensing required, and the sprayer will be working under his license. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they plan to do it there in the evening.
Mayor, I would move to approve this memorandum. Modify, I guess, that from the agenda, but I would move to approve rather than ratify this memorandum.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Town of Lingle and City of Torrington, as set forth in item 3, the mosquito spraying. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victorin. Gentlemen, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the MOU set forth in item number 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that MOU with the Town of Lingle is approved. Next item on the agenda is number 4, request for a catering permit. Julie Miller Harshberger with 307 Sports Bar and Grill is requesting a catering permit for a ladies' night at the theater event to be held on September 15th, 23 from 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. at 126 East 20th Avenue, known as Torrington Cinemas. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an event that Marie and 307 have hosted a number of times before. It's a very low-risk event. Marie, Charlie, and Julie certainly know what they're doing with it. I have no concerns and recommend approval.
All right. Council, do you have any questions for Chief Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, she's done this before and we didn't have a problem, so I would make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve the catering permit for Julie Miller Harshberger as set forth in item 4 on the agenda. Do I have a second? He was a little quicker. I got a second from Councilman Patterson. Gentlemen, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the catering permit set forth in item 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that catering permit set forth in item number 4 is approved. Next item on the agenda is number 5. This is a request for an open container permit. Nathan Kendall with the Elks Lodge 1726 is requesting an open container permit for a fall convention event to be held on 9/14/23 from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. The permitted area will be confined to the outside space on the Elks Lodge property in front of the building facing East 20th Avenue as specified on the map included with the addendum for the event. And I'd call on Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is one of 3 identical open container permits. The long and the short of it, in speaking with the folks from Elks, they're hosting a convention over that 3-day period, and they would like to reserve the outside space essentially on their patio. I don't know, there's probably 300 or 400 square feet there, I would imagine, where members or guests of the convention are able to sit outside and consume an alcoholic beverage if they wish during the convention. I touched base with Marie next door to make sure that that doesn't step on their property lines or boundaries or anything or impact their events. I think we're good to go on that. I don't have any other concerns. I'd recommend approval.
And Chief, it's my understanding that this Torrington, the Elks Lodge here is hosting the state convention this year.
That's my understanding as well, but it might be better to let Nathan speak to what that is as opposed to me, because he's got a lot more knowledge on that than I do.
Okay.
I know they're having a convention.
And Mr. Kendall, we know who you are, but would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Kenneth Guerrero, in place of Nathan Kendall.
Oh, okay.
Jeez, I'm so
Well,
sorry.
I'm glad I asked you to state your
That's
name.
all right. Wyoming Elks host a convention 4 times a year. This year for a fall convention, fall convention, we were chosen to do it. We'll be doing a ton of renovation on the lodge. We're going to have a substantial amount of people here for 3 or 4 days, and several of them smoke, I'm sure, and they've asked if they could have some outside area to have a drink and enjoy their smoking. So we're coming before you to ask permission.
All right. Council, any questions?
I just comment that it's always it's always nice when we're able to bring visitors into
For sure.
town. And so it's,
Yeah, we pretty much have the new hotel reserved up and Holiday Inn. So it's a good revenue for the city as well.
Councilman Deal, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a
Comment?
question for Mr. Eddington. Since it is the same event at 3 different dates, can we do this with one motion?
You can, since they're identical dates and times, unless one of you desire to pull one of those dates and discuss it.
Thank you.
And essentially, item 5, 6, and 7 all apply to the same event. It's a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday. Any further questions for Chief Johnson on this? Do I have a motion regarding these open container permits?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the open container permits outlined in items 5, 6, and 7 of the agenda.
I have a motion from Councilman Victrin to approve the open container applications in 5, 6, and 7 on the agenda. Do I have a second? Second from Councilman Kelly. Is there any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor of approval of the open container permits set forth in item 5, 6, and 7 on the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, those open container permits in items 5, 6, and 7 on the agenda are approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is item number 8. It is special event permit. Sean Keith from Torrington High School is requesting a special event permit for a homecoming parade to be held on 9/22/23 from 1:45 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. on Main Street. The applicant is requesting that the special event permit fee be waived due to the fact that Goshen County School District Number 1 is a nonprofit organization. And I would first go to Chief Johnson on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a very similar event to the one that we've done for the last few years. The most substantial difference from prior years is that we will not have elementary and middle school kiddos that are going to be mass transited over by the district just because it's a Friday when they don't have school. So that will be up to families and parents bringing kiddos if they wish. That simplifies things a little bit for us from the standpoint of pedestrian safety. It's not a risk-free event, but I think we have it planned as well as possible to mitigate risk. And it's a great event to support our kiddos.
And Chief Johnson, I know we talked about this morning, so the police department will be involved in this, and also
Yes, sir.
the fire department?
Yes, sir. So the police department will focus on traffic control and closure. And because we are doing it in the middle of the day, we essentially are closing Main Street while people are parked on Main. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to take place with that in terms of pre-notification with signage and then loudspeaker notification just before. We'll move in and handle the closure. And then the volunteer fire department will bring an engine to lead and an engine to follow to maximize safety for the kiddos. And then as we break down, coming down from 23rd, we'll send officers over to support pedestrian safety getting the parade back to Wiseman Field.
In my understanding, the parade will begin at, I guess, the high school and come west on 25th till it gets to Main Street and then south on Main Street.
Kind of. They'll come down 25th to get to Main Street for the parade, but all the way down from the high school to where they stage on Main Street, just north of 23rd, they'll be following the traffic laws and not acting like a parade, essentially. It won't turn into a parade where they have prioritized traffic until they move south of 23rd on Main Street. That's where it'll officially begin.
Okay.
So we'll stage them on Main, north of 23rd, for a few minutes there until the parade starts at 2.
Councilman, any questions for Chief Johnson?
Will they need an open container permit?
I hope not, sir. Otherwise, I'll require some additional follow-up.
And I see Ms. Sean Keith back there with a couple of students. Ma'am, if you'd like to just come up for a minute, these gentlemen may have a couple of questions for you. And bring whomever you wish.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm Sean Keith.
Hi, I'm Maggie Jacobson. I'm a junior at the high school.
And I'm Sarah Bertzall. I'm also a junior.
Okay. Thank you for coming up. Thank you, Mrs. Keith, or Ms. Keith, for
Absolutely.
sponsoring this, I guess.
Yes, I'm actually serving as one of the co-sponsors for the Student Council at THS this year.
Okay, good. This is all squared away. It's going to be organized, and
Yes.
I mean, this probably has been a parade that's happened since Torrington had got a high school, whatever that was.
From my
It's a-
understanding, it's happened in past years. It went away for a little while, and then we've brought it back. So.
I think this will be the 3rd year, I believe, that it's back. And so we want to thank you for reinstating it,
Yeah.
resurrecting it, because
Yeah.
there was a gap where
Oh,
we hadn't
okay.
done it for a while. So.
And these students work very hard to organize it. It's a student-led event, and they do a very nice job at organizing it and getting all the stuff ready for it. Yes.
And who does Torrington play that evening?
Do you guys know?
The volleyball team doesn't play, but I think the football team.
Plays Newcastle.
Well, they should be able to beat Newcastle, right?
Hopefully.
Well, I hope they are able to beat Newcastle. Gentlemen, any questions for the young ladies or for Ms. Keith?
Just want to thank you for your organization. I mean, your timeline, and it's laid out very carefully. Thank you. You've done a wonderful job.
You're welcome. We do have to thank Chief Johnson as well, because he's helped us a lot. So
Well, he's a good man.
give him credit where credit's due.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, any further questions for the chief on item 8 on the agenda, the special event permit request for the high school homecoming parade? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the request as presented.
I have
And waive the fee.
a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the special event permit set forth in item 8 as presented, and in addition to waive the special event permit fee. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Victorin. Any further discussion, gentlemen? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the special event permit, the high school homecoming parade, set forth in item 8 with the additional part of the motion that the special event permit fee be waived. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, item number 8 is approved and the special event permit fee is waived. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 9, which is award the bid fiscal year 24 golf course parking lot improvements, Phase 2. Staff recommends awarding the bid to J Built Homes, Inc. of Torrington, Wyoming in the amount of $142,742.45 with no contingency. Finished project will be scaled back in the amount of $22,742.45 to stay within budget. And I would call on Director of Public Works, City Engineer Jeff Harkins.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you stated, Mayor, we're recommending that you award this base bid for the fiscal year '24 golf course parking lot Phase 2 to J-Bell Homes. We had two bidders. Bids were opened on August 30th, 2023. The two bids were J-Bell Homes. The low bid was $142,742.45, and Paul Reed Construction was $207,476.85. Funding for this project was established in the fiscal year '24 budget under account 1090 230 in the amount of $120,000. $70,000 of that was ARPA NEU funds. $30,000 was the golf course trail fees, and $20,000 was the Progress Program grant from Goshen County Economic Development. So as you can see, we only have $120,000 budgeted for this project, but the cost to do the whole project as we let it out to bid came in at $142,000. So if you look at the map that I've got up on the screen, this is the cart barn and pro shop. This was the Phase 1 part that went right next to the cart barn. The proposed Phase 2 project was going to come all the way out parallel to what was done previously, and then over here and down, and then continue out towards the main road. We looked at it and we decided that if we took out this part right here, we could stay within budget. So that's what we're proposing to do, and then the rest of it would be constructed as laid out here on the plan. Any questions?
So is the total cost $120,000 or $142,000?
The bid came in at $142,000, but we're going to scale it back so that total cost will be $120,000, and we'll stay within budget.
Okay, so that,
We're going to award $120,000.
okay, so the part you got checkered up there, what is the part that they're gonna do, right?
Yeah, this
So
piece
when they do
here,
that, how are they gonna get it, people gonna get from the golf course? Because that'll block that road off, right?
well, it'll be constructed with concrete, so he'll probably construct this piece down to maybe like in this area, let that, harden up, and then he'll probably go in and do the next piece, and then people can come in and go this route. He'll probably finish up doing this part, and then like we had to do last year with this piece here, there'll be some times where, obviously access is going to be limited for a while as we do this section right here.
Because usually when they pour cement like that, they don't want them to drive on for a week.
Uh,
I mean, you
I
can drive on
agree,
earlier
but-
than that, but they don't like it.
Well, we don't like it, but obviously, we do have to allow access to the golf course. We
And
can
there's no other
possibly
way to
do
access
some side roads off to the side.
There's no other way to access the golf course, except that one road, isn't there?
That's true.
Mr. Harkins, it looks like this won't be done this year, but will be done next spring because the completion date is June 30, or substantial completion date is June 30 of 2024.
That's correct. The contractor, J-Bill Homes, he's really booked up for this fall, and I don't think he's going to be able to get to it, and neither would Paul Reed. They're both fully booked up with projects. So by allowing them to bid on it now and construct it next spring, it just gets it in the queue for them to be able to schedule it.
And I know I asked you this morning, this is Phase 2, so by not, doing $22,000 less work for Phase 2, it won't interfere with the general project. It won't interfere with phase 1 or subsequently phase 3 or 4 or 5 or however many phases.
No,
there are.
as you can see, the whole parking lot has basically been designed. The elevations are all on the ridges and the valleys. It's just a matter of what money is available and what we can do with the money available. This could, it was originally planned to be like a 5-phase project, but it may take more, just depending on what the available funding is and would allow us to do.
But even if it's done over time, you're not going to mess up phase 1 when you're doing phase 3 or 4 later on. It'll all tie in and work
No,
together.
it's all going to tie in together because it's all been designed, as you can see. So it's just a matter of picking and choosing which parts you want to construct next.
Mr. Mayor, realizing that this is city-owned property, the vast majority of the parking seems to be taken up by members of the Cottonwood Country Club. Do they contribute anything to the project?
They do not.
Have they been approached about contributing?
I think they've been approached for other projects. I don't believe they've been approached for this project.
Any additional questions for Mr. Harkins, gentlemen? Or Ms. Strecker, whomever? Well, I'll follow up on Councilman Victor. This is the second phase, so that conversation could be had after, for the other phases, right?
Absolutely.
It is a public parking lot.
That's considered a public parking lot?
Oh, it's city-owned, right?
Yes.
All right, any further questions for Mr. Harkins? I would entertain a motion to award the bid, approve that bid, and the amount of $120,000 as set forth in item number 9 on the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Deal. Any additional or further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of awarding that bid as set forth in item number 9 in the amount of $120,000 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that award bid in item number 9 is awarded and approved. Next item on the agenda is item number 10, which is a partnership agreement between the City of Torrington and Go Goshen. And I would first call on Mrs. Strecker.
So at our work session held, I don't even remember when it was, in August, we did talk about this, and Goshen County Economic Development and members of their board were there to answer your questions. This is the agreement, the final agreement, and it is changed from the one you reviewed that night. The 21st and Main piece was added back to the agreement. That was taken off. Apparently, the sale of that property did not go through or was canceled. So But Braden is here to answer any questions, any further questions, if you have them. Thank you.
All right, and we'll get Braden up here, but any questions, council, for Mrs. Strecker at this point? Hearing none, Braden?
Just a
Go ahead.
background question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
How long has the city had this agreement or agreement like this?
I would say at least 8 years that I can remember going back. I think we started this agreement under Mayor Varney, so I would say at least 8.
And is that 8 consecutive years?
Yes.
Any further questions before we ask Braden Conower to come up here? And Braden, the drill here is we all know who you are, but if you would just please state your name for the record.
Can do. Braden Konar, CEO of Go Goshen.
Well, I appreciate your standing there to take questions. Gentlemen, do you have any
Happy to
questions for Braden?
I got one question that's been bugging me for years. Why do we need a 23-member board?
That is a great question. I can't answer that. That is written in our bylaws, and that is what I follow. So I don't know. That would be up to the founding members of that entity in 1987.
And you have 23
I
currently?
do. We are full.
Can you name them all?
I could try, but
If there's, Mr. Mayor, if there's been an agreement for roughly 8 years, can you say how many times the city has been awarded a grant within that time through the Progress Program?
I would bet every year.
Would you agree, Mrs. Strecker?
Yeah, every year that it's been available, we've been allowed to apply once a year.
Is the property at 21st and Main still for sale eventually? Has the board determined that, or?
It hasn't been determined. We discussed it. We had a board meeting last Thursday and it was discussed, but at this point we weren't prepared to move forward with like new leases and that type of stuff. So we've been playing catch up on trying to get leases in place. And so I think it will be discussed over the course of the next year, but we will see where it ends up.
So you feel confident that you'll be able to manage events there?
Yeah.
For the next year?
Yeah, nothing's really changed, just we continue ownership.
And that building on 21st and Main, I know there are several lessees in there. Is that fully occupied?
I mean, I guess you'd have to define fully occupied. There, yes and no. The visitor center used to be in there, kind of back behind the retail space, which is now Bluebird Boutique. It has since moved to the Homesteaders Museum, and so that space is available, but we are discussing renovating that back for additional retail space. There is kind of, that's really the problem, I guess, if you looked at that building is if you look at it from like an income approach, there's a lot of wasted square footage. There's a lot of square footage that you can't really be utilized for retail, for what have you. And so as it sits, I would say yes. Is there potential for more occupancy? Potentially. I don't think it happens under us. I think it is where it is for us.
And that area that you say is currently unable to be used, that's what I would call a common area?
Yeah, yeah. There's a kitchen in there kind of behind like the Java jar and a common space in front of the bathrooms. And, you know, there's just space in there that like I said, if with renovation or whatever could be utilized from an income standpoint, but where we stand, it'll be, the footprint I think will be relatively the same other than an extended retail space.
What is the target market plan for the East Side Industrial Park?
That would be the plan that was discussed during that committee meeting that we have, that went after, gave lists of industries that would be good fits for Torrington and the Torrington East Side Industrial Park.
I think you were working on that, was it right? Or was that finalized?
That plan is finalized. I do think, from my standpoint, I do think that that park has a couple of pieces of due diligence that need to be done. And then I think that that plan can be set into motion.
And Braden, on that, following up on Councilman Victor, you plan to, as that develops and you do the due diligence that you say you need to do on that, you can keep Clerk Stricker or Clerk Treasurer Strecker fully advised as the developments and so on?
Yep.
Okay. How many acres? That's 35 acres out there, isn't it? I think.
Something like that.
Available.
Gentlemen, any further questions or comments? Or questions for Braden or comments? Hearing no takers, I would accept the motion on item 10 on the agenda. Excuse me, the partnership agreement between the City of Torrington and Go Goshen.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve the partnership agreement between the City of Torrington and Go Goshen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilman Patterson. Is there any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the partnership agreement between the City of Torrington and Go Goshen as set forth in item 10, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay.
Nay.
We have one nay, and I will vote aye, and 4 ayes, so that partnership agreement is approved.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 11. The Goshen Solar Project, which was also a topic of discussion at our last work session on August something, 20-something of this year. Notice of intent to be a party, and Mr. Eddington has provided a 2-page document, the first page, and then what we call in the law a certificate of service on the second page. And I would I'd call on Jim Eddington, the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have is a proposed notice. After our work session, I reviewed the statutes the next day. That statute 3512-111B specifically talks about notice of intent to be a party, so that is my proposed notice with your approval. If you recall, that needs to be filed by 9/27. And so if you approve that tonight, we will send it in tomorrow and we will become a party and start visiting with the economists.
And I just want to follow up, Mr. Eddington. I consider it critical that we file this and become a party, because a party gives us rights and privileges that we would not have as a non-party, and that includes participation in the hearing, the ability to provide motions, documents, exhibits and those so on, right? That gives us that right.
Absolutely. Be informed, be a participant, and potentially to be compensated
With impact funds.
with impact funds.
And if we didn't do this, then we might not be able to get impact funds.
That's correct.
And just so people that don't know, is it 300 and some workers are supposed to come in during the construction phase? And there is state, what they call impact funds available if you have that onslaught of workers descending upon the community, so to speak. There can be funds available for the increased need for law enforcement and ambulance services and so on. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Councilman, any further questions for City Attorney Eddington or Mrs. Strecker on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just a curiosity of mine, there's nothing in statute or anything in the rules of intending to be a party that, let's say, a political subdivision doesn't become a party, does that negate funding for those that did become a party? Like, they all have to be part of it, or otherwise nobody gets any assistance? That's my question.
I think so. I think they'd have to be a party and present their case, their evidence for the funding, their request. And that's what the economist said he will assist us with. We make a presentation with exhibits and evidence of how we will be impacted, and that's his job to help us. So I think it's a requirement. Again, this is virgin territory for the city of Torrington, and so we're going to lean heavily on the economist, Mr. Dolstad, but he seemed to be very accommodating, and so we'll keep you updated as we proceed, obviously.
They obviously prefer for an MOU between all of the people involved, but you don't have to have the MOU, he said, so.
So just hypothetically, if in this area, the City of Torrington were the only one that became a party, that does not, and the others didn't for whatever reason, and I'm talking about other municipalities in this area, that doesn't have any negative effect on our ability to receive impact funds.
Correct. That's my understanding. It would not affect us if we're a party.
It affects them. They're not going to be.
I know of one other town that anticipates being a party, as you probably know. Mr. Sturgeon plagiarized my pleadings in my office. So the town of Yoder, I anticipate, will be a party also.
And I want to follow up with what Mr. Eddington had. I had a conversation with Christopher Tolson, who was the first person that notified us of this, and he is an economist that works for DEQ, Industrial Siting Division, and he's very helpful. He considers it his job to basically take care of municipalities that this is a new deal and walk you through that, answer any questions you may have, and help you through this process. That's my understanding of his attitude and his purpose.
Mine also. He was extremely helpful when Ms. Strecker and I had a conference call with him.
Well, this is the first step in the right direction, I think.
I believe so.
And these exhibits and documents or whatever that the city of Torrington may choose to present, that is all presented at the hearing that's set in the Pony Express room, I believe, in October sometime, right?
October 17th.
Okay. Yes, October 17th. All right, gentlemen, any further questions for the city attorney or the clerk treasurer?
Just a comment for the city attorney that even though Mr. Sturgeon was a former student of mine, it was not in my class that he learned how to plagiarize.
Since he's in my office, I'm going to allow it.
It's called borrowing, Mr. Eddington.
Mentoring. I was mentoring.
Mentoring.
There was no plagiarism.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve item 11, Goshen Solar Project.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve item 11, Goshen Solar Project, City of Torrington notice of intent to be a party. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Kelly. Gentlemen, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving in item 11, the notice of intent to be a party on behalf of the City of Torrington for the Goshen Solar Project, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that Goshen Solar Project set forth in item 11 is approved. Next item on the agenda is the financial report. To request to approve the financial report for fiscal year ending June 6th or June 30th, 2023. And I would call on Clerk Treasurer Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Attached to your agenda was the financial report for ending June 30th, 2023. And we'll start with the cash balance report. This basically lists all of our cash balances as of June 30th, the end of the fiscal year. It starts out with restricted funds. We have $2.8 million in restricted funds. These funds are set to be used for a specific purpose, and they're listed there along with their balance. The unrestricted funds, I have them separated into two categories: certificates of deposit and investments, and checking and savings. These funds are available for use. The deposits and investments balance is $8.2 million, almost 8.3, and then our checking and savings is at 8.5. So the total cash and investments are $16.8 million, which is up about $334,000 from last report, which was December 30th, 2022. As far as restricted cash and cash on hand, we have $19.6 million. This is up about $1.2 million. Our weighted average rate has increased to 2.94%. So our funds, our cash funds do look like they're increasing, but we have to remember that we have funds here that we have earmarked for future expenditures. So that is included in that balance, and that's a little over $1 million. And these are equipment that are due, and the delivery dates out here for this fiscal year and also for next fiscal year. So I'll keep a list of those so we don't lose track of them and make sure that they're always accounted for. Accounts receivable, the accounts past due as of June 30th were $23,484. The last report, they were at $41,000, so it's markedly improved. And the main reason there is in the winter, we cannot turn off accounts, mainly because of temperature or the holidays. So you can see the difference it makes in our past due balances in the summer when we are able to turn off. The number of discontinuations for non-payment on June 28th, there were only 9 accounts totaling $1,369. In December, there was almost $4,000 worth of accounts. The amount at collections has went down about $5,000. That's $73,000. And also the amount turned over to the city attorney went down slightly, but it's still at $11,000. Do I have any questions on our current cash balances and report?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question on the expenditures carried over to FY24. The last one regarding the 1-ton extended cab pickup. We talked about that this morning, and I just want to clarify it for everybody. That has a delivery date which is past August 31st of 2023, and what was the report we received from Kelly Matlock?
Well, we received an email from the vendor, and the truck is here. It is getting the box put on, so we should have it this month. So it won't be too much longer. No further questions. I'll move on to our consolidated cash position at the end of the year. Just a reminder, when we did our budget this year, I had to estimate what our ending cash balance would be. And that's something that's really hard to do, as much money that flows in and out, and a budget that's approved in the middle of June. So this kind of tells you where we ended up. So I took the cash balance from the previous page, plus outstanding deposits, less outstanding checks, leaves me my adjusted bank balance of $19.7 million. We take out the unpaid bills for fiscal year '23 of $540,000. And then we have to take out the restricted cash balance because that was not available for the budget. So that leaves me with $16.4 million, and that's my actual cash at the end of the year. Okay, so I had estimated in the budget 16.5. So I estimated a little too much this year. $160,220 over. We'll keep an eye on that. It should not really affect the long term at all. We'll keep an eye, but just for your information, we were really close. So.
You're to be commended, I think, for hitting it that close. That's amazing.
I wish I was closer, but to me, that's a lot of money. So next page, we'll go to our budget and how everybody ended up with their budget and how our revenues ended up with the budget. I kind of changed the format a little bit and kind of broke it up into categories. So operating revenue, so this is all of our tax revenue, and it compares what we received to what I had budgeted. As you can see, we are at 114% for our taxes total, which is pretty good. That's where we want to be. We want to be over 100% on our revenue. I'm pretty conservative when I budget revenues because there's nothing worse than over budgeting a revenue and expecting more money and then spending it when you don't have it. So a few taxes were not where they were supposed to be or where I had it estimated, but the big one here I wanted to talk about was sales tax. It was at 124%, and so was optional sales tax. And on the last page of this budget report, I'll have that graph for you to look at. We were up in sales tax more than I expected for the budget. Lottery proceeds were more than I had expected, so we received about $38,000 last year. This year we received $58,000. The Wyoming Gaming Commission, last year I'd received about $4,000, and we received about $22,000.
May I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Does that Wyoming Gaming Commission revenue, it's not from the lotto, right?
No, it's from the skilled games, I believe.
That are around town?
Mm-hmm. Mostly. And I believe that the new, it just left my mind, I'm sorry, will be coming under this as well. The
Pari-mutuel betting.
well, that as well as Keno, I believe that will be under this.
Keno wouldn't be included in these figures on here?
What's that?
Keno wouldn't be included in these figures that are on here already? From the gaming
I
commission?
don't, since it just started, I don't think we've received the revenues on those yet. And this was as of June, so I don't think there's any Keno revenue in here.
Well, I thought Keno was over a year old already.
I think Keno is administered under the Lottery Commission, isn't it?
I'll double check on that.
Along those lines, I'm curious, is there some sort of funding model about how that money is distributed, or is it just based upon what is spent here locally?
I think it's whatever's in the county,
Okay.
yes.
I have this question, Mr. Eddington, or whoever may know. If the pari-mutuel historic horse racing type casino comes into Goshen County but not in the city of Torrington, say it's placed outside of the city into the county, does the city still share in those funds?
I believe so. I believe it's based on population. Kind of like sales tax.
Would it then be distributed to all the municipalities? Only on a different
On
percentage rate?
population.
So if it's allowed in here by the county commissioners and it's placed outside of the city of Torrington or any municipality, somewhere in the county, then the county will participate in that, and the city of Torrington and the other various municipalities in Goshen County,
I believe so.
based on population, as your understanding.
That's my understanding. I wasn't prepared for that question, but I will find out for sure and let you guys know. Property tax was at 112%, vehicle tax at 133%, and then our direct local distribution from the state comes in. I know what that is going to be at the end of the legislative session. So other revenues will go on to licenses and permits at 157%, intergovernmental revenue 102%. Charges for services at 103. Fines and other revenue at 124%. Franchises and other utility revenues at 89%. So our total operating revenues were at 107%, which is good. Here at the bottom is our grant revenues, grants or loans, and we were at 91%. This all depends on where the projects are coming in or when the grants are received. Sometimes, the projects are held up because of the availability of contractors, the availability of materials. You gotta kind of keep that in mind in this day and time. So the total general fund revenue came in at 106% above what I had budgeted. So that's really good. So if you go on to the general fund expenditures, and you can break these out by department. And with expenditures, you don't want to spend 100%. So you want to be below that. And we're at 92.89%. None of my departments went over budget. They're very good about keeping track of their expenses, and I'm usually good at reminding them. As far as operating goes, we're good there. And then if you look at the construction projects, these are the expenses for all the construction and equipment. And again, we've had some delays or just projects that didn't come into fruition but were budgeted. So we were only at 21%, but the grand total expenditures are at 81% for the fiscal year, which is well below the budget. Does anybody have any questions on those? So we can go on to the enterprise funds, and we can look at the operation, so I took out all of the capital and equipment, so we can just look at operating expenses and revenues. So for the water fund, believe it or not, even with our wet spring, we come in at 109% of what I had predicted for revenues. Expenses were at 75%, so that's well below what I had budgeted. The sewer fund revenue also at 106%. And the expenditures are at 68%. Electric fund also came above where I had predicted. Most of these changes were based, you know, I try to predict what usage is going to be, and you just don't know what the year's going to be like. If it's going to be hot, cold, you try to forecast. You know, the weather makes a huge difference in water usage and electric usage. And then sewers kind of follows along with water. So if water's up, the sewer's probably going to be up. So it doesn't mean that we're overcharging or anything like that. It just means that I have budgeted more, or we've collected more than I had predicted or budgeted. So electrical expenses were at 95%. Sanitation revenue, it was also at 109%. And their expenditures were at 92.79. Airport was at 87.64% in revenues, and their expenditures were at 76.26. The golf revenue, if you look at it, it is well above what I had predicted. So we had a very, very busy golf season. And then their expenditures, this is the closest we've come. We're at 99.18%, very close to that 100% mark, but we got through it. Swimming pool revenue was at 136%, so that's pretty good. And the expenses were at about 94%. The ambulance revenue came in at 122%, well above what we had predicted, and I also adjusted that budget a little bit, I believe. So they were very busy. But you can see that made a huge difference in their bottom line. They are positive. So the ambulance expenditures were at 93%. The cemetery revenue was at 81.67%. And there's just no way of predicting what that revenue is going to be. So I guess I overestimated there. And their expenditures were at 98. So if you look at the projects, basically if you look at the budget, so for water fund, I have almost $5 million in the budget for revenue. That means I have that much in grants and loans budgeted. And that's how much we actually collected. And then this is what we spent out of those grants and what I had budgeted for an expense on those projects. So basically here you're just seeing the match. The sewer fund the same way. We have a large amount budgeted for revenue, and that project's just getting started. So we'll see those figures getting up to that mark in fiscal year 24. Electric fund, they don't have any grant revenues. They did have construction, and this is what they spent on the construction side. Or I believe that was equipment. Sanitation fund revenue, I had originally budgeted for a lease purchase, but with interest rates doing what they're doing, I just kind of held off on that, and I think we're going to be fine. So we went ahead and spent that money on the equipment, and we're still waiting on the rest of that equipment to come in. Airport revenue, we always have grants in the airport with FAA. We did spend 112,000. We had 687 budgeted. And then we spent 130,000 of that. So that's where the airport came out. The golf fund revenue, we do get rec board grants and other sorts of grants there, and you can see that there. And then the golf fund expense, what we spent for that equipment. Ambulance revenue, for grants, we got 89,000. I only had budgeted 62. And then we spent 62,505. The cemetery revenue, I believe we were going to purchase a mower with lease purchase, but again, I did not go through with that, so we didn't get that revenue, but we do have that purchase there. So this page really tells where we're at as far as net revenue. This is on a cash basis, basically what we brought in for the year compared to what we expense for the year. It has no cash carryover and no depreciation, and of course, these are not audited yet. The general fund's at 2.1 million in their net revenue balance. The water fund's at 766,000. Sewer fund's a -8. The electric fund's at 332,000. Sanitation fund was at a -98,000. The airport's at a -120. The golf fund's at a -457. The swimming pool's at a -145. And the ambulance, woohoo, $40,000 in the red, but you saw how busy they were and how much revenue they brought in. Cemetery's at a -277. So for the total, all the city funds, our net revenue was 2.1 million for fiscal year 23. And here's a little graph that kind of shows you where they've been over the last 3 years. This also shows you where they were last fiscal year at this time and the year before that. So you can kind of compare. And it'll go up and down depending, like I said, this is on a cash basis, so it'll go up and down depending on if they had a large equipment purchase, if they had construction going on, that sort of thing. The very last page here is our sales tax history, and as I pointed out earlier, it was at 125%. You can see how over the years, this here was a recession time, and then in 2018, I think that's close to the time when we started receiving revenues on online sales. So I think that's what that is. And then the very last page is just our debt. I prepare this every year. This is our debt outstanding. We have 2.8 million outstanding in debt. And then at the bottom, I break it out by fund. The balance is there. And that's all I have for you tonight. I'd be glad to answer any questions. And I'll get back to you on how that gaming money is split out and for sure. But sorry to bore you to death.
That was anything but boring, and you walked through with us, so I appreciate that. I had the extra advantage of hearing you at the staff meeting this morning, but thank you, Mrs. Stricker.
Those numbers are generally good. They're positive numbers, so that's not boring to get a good financial
Yeah.
performance.
I take pride in trying to give you good numbers every year. All of it starts with the budget, though. And I have to thank my department heads. They really watch their budget. They don't like to make me mad.
We don't like the phone calls.
That's good, though.
Yeah.
As I look through this, though, there's a couple of things that really stand out to me. And that's the telephone franchise revenue and the telecommunications franchise revenue. I think we really need to take a good look at those two revenues and see if we can't.
I think we need
get
to look at
realistic
those.
about it.
Yeah. That is, franchises are one of those things that we haven't looked at in a long time, really. And I do believe our gas franchise is coming up here soon for renewal.
Especially since they're doing all the fiber networking. They got a lot of conduit in the ground around here.
It's caused a lot of problems, too. But it'll be nice to have fiber through town.
As part of that telephone utility, because of the increased use of cell phones as opposed to landlines?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is part of the telephone utility decrease because of the increased use of cell phones as opposed to landlines?
Well, our telephone franchise has been $2,400 the 21 years I've worked here. It's the lowest that we can charge without the customer having an additional fee on their bill. So it has not changed. The telecommunication franchise is pretty new, and so that is something that just started a couple years ago when these new cell phone started coming in. But we definitely don't get enough off of telephone as much as they're in our right-of-ways. Natural gas, I think, is probably the most and franchise that we have, and hopefully we can negotiate that with Black Hills Power to not go down. And cable TV is actually one that's been decreasing.
One thing I'd like to note is the investment income and how much it's up.
Why?
No, just noting that it is
It
up
is, yes.
substantially.
Yes, Morton Asset Management, if you look at our cash, as our CDs are coming due at the lower interest rate, they're reinvesting at the higher interest rate. So this has really went up. I think it was at 2 something. We only invest in usually treasuries or government-backed type bonds and securities. So we're not going to get the huge, but that's definitely a big increase there for our investments. All right.
Do we approve the financial report or accept the financial?
Just accept it, yes.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the financial report.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to accept the financial report set forth in item number 12 on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none. All those in favor of acceptance of the financial report set forth in item 12 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that financial report in item 12 is accepted. Next item on the agenda is item 13, approval of the bills from August 16th, 23 to September 5th, 23. Mrs. Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Attached to your agenda were a list of bills, and I also handed out an additional set tonight for your consideration. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have on those bills.
I have one question. I've noticed there's a lot of these, there are deposit refunds that says something about never received. Was there a bunch of those that never got sent or lost or something? Or?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is that time of year when we're going through our uncashed checks for unclaimed property. And so we're trying to contact those people who have not received or cashed their checks. And so you'll see a lot of reissued checks because they said they haven't gotten them. And we either get bad addresses when they sign out and get the mail back, or it's so little they don't pay any attention to it. But we spend a lot of time on those checks.
I noticed there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, it is that time of year we're going through them all because we have that report that's due November 1st to the state of Wyoming for unclaimed property.
I'll claim it.
Give me a proof of ID and I'll give it to you.
Mrs. Strecker, on looking at the handout you provided tonight on page 3,
Yes.
that Healing Connections, that mental health therapy, is this part of that grant that exists?
Yes, I believe it is. And I believe we've already gotten reimbursement from that grant for this.
And just for a reminder, there was a grant awarded to the city for mental health services for EMS and firemen.
First responders, yes.
First responders, and I think they were entitled to 3 sessions.
I can't remember.
It's 2, but we've expanded that so they can, with the permission of the state, if they want to get additional visits, they can.
But that's what that is on page 3 of the handout. that you-
Yes.
If there are no further questions, I make a motion to approve the bills as presented.
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly on item 13 to approve the bills as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victron. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the bills set forth in item 13 on the agenda from August 16th, 23 to September 5th, 23, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, those bills set forth in item 3 are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. That is a time for any member of the public or council to make comments, or is there any takers? Are there any takers? Come on up, Marie. And the drill is, we know who you are, but please state your name for the record.
All right, Marie Flanagan, owner of Torrington Cinemas. I just wanted to let you guys know that we had a huge push for providing a place for students to have something to do on those days off during the school year. And I, along with 30 other businesses of our community, and that list is growing, we are going to be providing a free movie for all students every day that they are off school. So on that fourth day, whether it's a Monday or a Friday, we have, along with the participation of many, many, many other amazing businesses in our community who have stood alongside each other to provide something to our students and to those parents who may need that extra help during this transition of the school district going to a 4-day week. The businesses have donated to provide students with free tickets to the movie theater. So I just wanted to let you know that all of us businesses are standing together. We are getting along amazingly. We have provided this to our community, to all communities of Goshen County for free. We want to continue doing this for our county and our community here in Torrington. And we want to let you know that we have a group together that's going to be offering this to our community in different areas and different ways for the foreseeable future, free to the city. And we want to make sure that as the businesses and those of us who pay those taxes every month, we want to make sure that we are not only providing a great service, but showing our community that we care. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we have banded together to provide our community and the students of our community things that are not provided in any other way. So I just wanted to let you guys know that the businesses are working together amazingly, and we are really thinking about our community and how we can make it a better place and grow in the ways that we need to grow so that we don't vanish, because it is getting closer to that point. So we want to be there, and my motto for all businesses is, if you succeed, then I succeed. So let's focus on everybody else so that we can all support each other.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate it. All right. Fire Chief Patch let me know he wouldn't be here tonight, otherwise I would call on him. Dennis, I know there's been a few things going on with the fire department here since last council meeting. Can you just kind of give us an update?
Mayor, what I know is all the first responders in the county have been on some pretty traumatic events in the past month. So just always thank them and wish them well, because they do need the help. They did have, of course, a crash north of Lingle the other day. They went on and with other departments. Lingle, I think, was there, and of course all the EMS people that could go. And then they had the haystack fire at the cell barn the middle of last month, so they got that extinguished. That aerial ladder truck worked very well for that. You don't usually get to use an aerial ladder truck on a haystack fire, but time was right and it worked very well. So, yeah.
And I appreciate there have been some very traumatic car wrecks south of town and north of Lingle. I mean,
Right.
And that's, those EMS guys have to respond, and the fire department, whatever law enforcement has jurisdiction, and it is tough, I know.
Yeah, a lot of people get involved, yeah.
All right, any questions for Dennis?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question for Dennis, but I wondered if staff or you could help remind the community about the Baylor hours, and maybe, I believe there's a fall cleanup time coming up where residents can take their yard waste to the Baylor facility. I think that's coming up. I'm not exactly sure, so maybe somebody in the staff could help remind us. I believe I saw it on my utility bill, but
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it was on the utility bill, I saw it too. I can't remember the dates though.
well, reference your utility bill.
Thank you, Councilman Victor. And so all out there in Radio Land, look at your utility bill. There's information available. So read it carefully, not just the numbers on it. And often there is information set forth on your utility bill about fall cleanup and the availability of the use of the Baylor for fall cleanup and so on.
Councilman Victor, and we'll look into that and get it on the Facebook notification. And I believe Sylvia's got that Text Your Gov. Is she going with that yet?
They're still testing it.
Okay, they're still testing other systems, so.
All right, Councilman, any further, we're in public comment, any further comments or questions?